Hi folks, this is Dr. Rob Sivas. I am the Carb Addiction Doc, and that is my title, the Carb Addiction Doc. I am a metabolic health specialist, and while we have a significant place in a ketogenic community, in a low carbohydrate community, one of the concerns for me with that community is we tend to be a little bit over-evangelical about some of the foods that we eat. And I'm kind of that way in my own personal life. I've altered and migrated to a certain extent personally to a primarily carnivore diet. However, that is not because it's healthier or better. That is not because it's healthier or better. I've chosen to do that because I like to eat that way. My family likes to eat that way, and because it's simple and convenient. As part of that, I have to put that agenda aside as a physician. And when patients come in to see me, and we have tons of patients, if you're interested in seeing me, text or WhatsApp 561-517-0642. We are clinically active. Really what my concern as a metabolic health specialist is to restore metabolic health, to go through a therapeutic phase where you are improving your health, and then help you to sustain a healthy way of eating where your body is getting the macro and micronutrients you need, and you are changing how you deal with your emotional needs, that your eating pattern is no longer your emotion management pattern, that you're eating for nutrition and you're doing things that do not involve eating and drinking for your mental health. Because we see a lot of the metabolic illnesses as a shift away from eating nutritionally toward eating emotionally. And along those lines, throughout the world, there are multiple populations who either don't believe in or don't like to eat animal products. So today's video is for that portion of patients that I have that prefer to be vegetarian or dominant vegetarian. Now, what we look at, and I don't want to use vegan, vegetarian, we're talking about a plant-based diet. And a lot of you out there are immediately going to say, well, that's wrong, that's bad. And that is as erroneously judgmental as the plant-based people telling you that animals are bad. We have to open our eyes and ears to say, okay, how can we help somebody? Can we? And how can we help somebody be as metabolically healthy as they can be eating plants instead of eating carnivore? Because that's their choice. And this is the agenda that I use, or the program that I use for my vegetarian patients. And remember, the goal here is to be metabolically healthy. And the goal here is, in an era of abundance, to avoid chronic, excessive carbohydrate consumption while getting in the right proportions and on a regular enough basis, all the macro and micronutrients you need. So this is a nutritional discussion. We're going to leave the mental health side for a different video. And there are two different populations of people who primarily eat plants. There are those that are metabolically ill, and there are those that are metabolically healthy. And we'll discuss how to improve those health, how to look out for certain nutrients, and then we'll discuss how to get from a metabolically unhealthy place to a metabolically healthy place. And the thing that defines the two, when you're looking at the vegetarian diet, is that the group that is metabolically unhealthy are either too limited in the range of foods they eat and they're not getting adequate macros in, or micronutrients, which typically is a very restricted vegan diet, or they are white vegetarians. And I don't mean by skin color. They're eating predominantly white foods, the starches, the carbohydrate-laden starches. For those that do not have a substance abuse problem with carbohydrates, all we need to do there is tweak a few things to make sure they're getting adequate nutrients in. So we've got both populations in the vegetarian group that we're going to deal with. And for those that have obesity or type 2 diabetes as a problem, or significant cardiovascular heart disease, or have PCOS, those groups, by definition with those diseases, you fall into the carbohydrate addiction group. And for those folks, we progressively want you to get rid of starchy carbohydrates from your diet, starchy and sugary carbohydrates from your diet, and we'll define that. For those that are otherwise metabolically healthy, and the only way to know is with blood work, so we always start my practice by getting comprehensive blood work. For those that don't have an issue with chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption as a mental health substance abuse issue. Carbohydrates are fine. Because remember, folks, carbohydrates are not the problem. It's our relationship with them. So we're going to deal with both. But we'll assume that most people are obese or have health issues related to chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. So the first issue is getting to know who you are, because most people don't. And the first question I have for everybody is this one. Don't eat or drink anything unless you absolutely know the total carbohydrate content of what you're eating. So here's my cell phone. Google is a very, very useful place to go. You don't need special apps, anything else. Just go to Google and say total carbohydrate content of an apple, total carbohydrate content of a banana, and you see, wow, it's got 30 grams of carbohydrates in it. And there is no such thing as a natural carbohydrate or an artificial one. It's exactly the same molecule. It's a 6-sided carbon molecule, glucose, fructose, and you're not going to see much galactose in a vegetarian diet because that's exclusively in milk. So get to know the carbohydrate content of the food you're eating, and then separate out the carbohydrates that come from cellulose, because human beings have lost the capacity to digest cellulose. Those are the carbohydrates that are in plants that are part of the plant of the plants, if that makes sense. The leafy vegetables, the cellulose. Unextractable by humans, cows, gorillas, your classic vegetarian animals have the ability, together with bacteria, funguses, and viruses, to extract leafy vegetable carbohydrates from cellulose. We human beings have lost that capacity, so you want to separate that out. Cellulose, we're not going to digest. The second concept is look at how often you're eating. The ideal is 2 or 3 meals a day. And if you're vegetarian, even eating 3 times a day is fine, because to get adequate quantity in is a problem. But you want to go a long period of time without eating where you utilize what you've eaten. If you're eating all the time and grazing and snacking, that's problematic because you're in storage mode all the time. You don't get into utilization mode. So look at how often you're snacking. And every time, I don't care if it's a lettuce leaf, a peanut, I don't care what it is, every time you put calories in your mouth, that's a meal. So quantify how often that's happening, and then look at why you're eating right now. And if you've got preordained, predetermined 1, 2, or 3, preferably 2 or 3 meals a day that are pre-planned, you're eating typically for the nutritional value. If you're eating opportunistically or itinerantly, or you're about to have dinner and you're standing in front of the fridge for something, or you're going home to dinner and you're in line at McDonald's, or you've just eaten your meal and now you're sitting in front of the TV, you're eating for your head, and that's problematic. Doesn't matter what you're eating. That's a snack. And a snack is always an emotional event. So get to know your pattern of eating. As part of that, I'm looking for you to look at when the best times each day are to eat. And because we're creatures of routine, try to create a routine that you're eating at the same time each day. So read your labels. On the back of the label, you look at the total carbohydrate content and then use Google to tell you the total carbohydrate content. Don't assume that it's healthy. And you look at the total carbohydrates, not the net carbohydrates. Now, if you're going to cook or prepare food, chopping food up, heating food up, baking, or cooking, those are incredibly relaxing endorphin-releasing experiences. But make yourself proud of what you're eating. You concoct a beautiful salad, use your best plates, sit at a table with a knife and fork and eat that food. And the goal for our addicts is to get as close to 0 non-vegetable carbohydrates as possible. For the regular vegetarians, a little bit of carbohydrate is okay. The challenge is adequate fat. Because if we're not eating a lot of carbohydrates, the replacement has to be fat, and we'll go down that road. The other issues is getting enough protein, fat, B12, calcium, ADEK, zinc, and iron in on a narrow plant-based diet. So those are the nutrients we're going to look at. As you do this, the first way to prepare yourself is one of 2 ways. You can either start on what I call a keto cleanse diet. So for the period of around 36 to 72 hours, a day and a half to about 3 days, you can either do a 36-hour calorie fast, a wet fast where you're consuming no calories, but you're drinking fluids, and any 0-calorie liquids are fine. The key thing is that you do want to get adequate salt in, otherwise your headache's going to bother you, a lot of problems are going to bother you. That's the deep dive. And that can be problematic, so don't do that if you're a rookie, if this is your first time. But if you're recovering, if you want to be more plant-based, that's not a bad way. It's diving into the deep end of the pool, but a 36-hour to 72-hour zero calorie wet fast adding salt, especially to broth or what you're drinking, is a good way to go. The alternative way to do it is to do around 36 to 72 hours of what I call a keto cleanse, where you're eating pure leafy vegetables and salads. Pure leafy vegetables and salads. The key thing there is make sure you add generous portions of what I call pressed oils. That would be avocado oil, coconut oil, or olive oil, where the oil is pressed out of an oily plant, not the hydrogenated, heated up oils, the seed oils. Stay away from oils made of seeds. And under those conditions, when you're doing that leafy fast, stay away from starchy vegetables. This is about green vegetables, colored vegetables, but all the leafy above ground vegetables, where you're consuming very, very few absorbable calories, but you're eating a big salad to feel full. Then, once you've gone through that first period, from a nutritional perspective, it is ideal to alternate every day or every few days a pure above ground leafy plant-based meal or meals. You can add nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are fine to eat, but not the oils from those nuts and seeds when they've been hydrolyzed. You can add in avocado, you can add in some tomatoes, some olives. You can add in some of the sugar-containing foods like onions, like peas, like carrots, like beans, but stay absolutely away from rices, potatoes, and all grain products, whether it's white flour or quinoa or couscous. I don't care how sexy and California-based those grains are. Stay away from them if you are a recovering addict. If you're not, adding a little bit of quinoa or couscous to your food is okay, but it should be controlled. And the problem with someone like myself is I can't control that. So those are the leafy plant days. And then you can alternate that with what I call full plant and possibly, if you choose to, renewable animal product foods. So that is where you can eat the more starchy vegetables, which are the peas, carrots, beans, and corn, staying away again from the grains, the potatoes, and the rices. And you can add some squashes or some pumpkins. But if you choose to, some of the healthiest nutrient supplements are what I call the renewable animal products, and there really are two sources of those. Dairy, which is going to give you the saturated fat that you need and the protein that you need, amongst other things, as well as the calcium. And then eggs. Eggs have pretty much everything in them that you need to eat except for the calcium. And I've even got a few patients who will grind up the calcium to a powder and sprinkle it on their food to get adequate calcium in, particularly the women. As long as it's very, very fine powder, it's a very, very healthy source of calcium. In the Western world here, we don't often think of that. But the eggshell is jam-packed with calcium, and either eggs and dairy or dairy and eggs is ideal. If you want to add some fish to that or some seafood, an ovo-lacto or pescatarian diet is going to give you the full range of what you need in terms of macros and micros. However, if you are going to be pure vegetarian, your flaxseed oils, your beans, not so much tofu, but the other forms of beans, those are good sources of protein, good source of fat. Your biggest problem is chasing your tail with fat, and that's where the oils come in. The non-starchy vegetables, don't even count them in your carbohydrate content. You really want to look at protein and fat as your primary fuel sources and then look at micronutrients. And quite frankly, cheese or full cream milk are some of the healthiest foods you can eat, but they're animal products. Again, if you have children and you breastfeed your children, there may not be that much of a debate about those milk products. Fish once or twice a week, fish or seafood, is also incredibly healthy. And fish and seafood is the most natural food on the planet Earth. It has been least altered by humans. Our plants have been most altered, our domestic animals moderately altered, and then fish, seafood, and game, obviously you're not going to eat the game, but the fish and the seafood has been unaltered for the most part by human beings. We do not want you eating fruit. Some people will say, oh, berries are okay. I don't want you eating berries, especially if you're on the obesity side. Berries are okay from time to time in a salad if you don't have a metabolic health issue. You don't have that addiction. But certainly avocados, tomatoes, and olives are absolutely fine. And the beauty about those is they do have, obviously not the tomatoes, but the avocados and the olives, really healthy fat. But please make sure you avoid grain products, potatoes, rice, yogurts in America, full cream yogurt. Again, it's a milk product for the most part. Stay away from that. Tortillas, pastas, bread products, popcorn, battered foods, sweets and chips. Stay the hell away from those. Those are all processed carbohydrates. And avoid lookalikes. Avoid things that have the word keto in front of it. Keto bread, keto brownies, keto. Stay away from those. Those are just, the reason you're eating them is for the emotional value, not the nutritional value. Stay away from them. Low carb pasta, low carb ice cream, alternative forms of flours. Try to stay away from those. And if you're having a moment, if you're a little bit down, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea helps. But folks, when you are looking to get into ketosis, and that's a challenge on a vegetarian diet. On a vegetarian diet, you've got to eat a huge amount of fat to get into ketosis because it is so carbohydrate dominant. That's where ketone IQ comes in. And exogenous forms of ketones are a very useful way that my vegetarian population dumps themselves into ketosis at various times in the day. Some people have this first thing in the morning. Some people have this together with a meal, their main meal, maybe in the evening. But if you're measuring your ketones and you're not in ketosis and you're a vegetarian, this is a very helpful way to get into ketosis. And now we've tried keto salts, we've tried keto esters, there's a variety on the market. I'm not particular about that. However, Cheryl, my dietitian, myself, the only reason I'm pushing this, and I'm not pushing it hard, but the only reason I say this is I personally use this. Why? Because we tried about 30 different ones. And this one, measuring ketones, gives us the best long-term result. It raises ketones in your bloodstream to about 1.5 to 3, and that effect is sustained for around 5 to 6 hours. So getting into ketosis is such an important metabolic component, and that ketone IQ helps tremendously to get you across that. I'm not saying you have to do that. You can use some MCT oil, you can use some olive oil, some coconut oil, some avocado oil in your coffee or tea. I just find a shot of that helps me tremendously. And I have those lying around my world. I've got them on my desk at work. If I'm dragging or if I need to be deeper in ketosis, that's what I do. Obviously, I'm more on the carnivore side personally, but if you're vegetarian, those can factor into your diet very, very easily and make up for the fat that you're not eating to help you there. The next big thing about a vegetarian diet is portion size doesn't matter. The nutrient value of a vegetarian diet is relatively poor. So you need to eat way more pure vegetable diet than you need on an animal product diet where the nutrients are hyper-concentrated. So don't be afraid to eat more. Eat till you're full, eat till you're stuffed. But try not to eat more than twice, maybe 3 times a day. The goal there is to use fat that you put on your food, and no matter what, always add some sort of oil to your food. Doesn't matter what that is. And the oil suppresses appetite. You'll still eat a decent amount, but it'll suppress appetite so that you're not grazing and snacking. And then the other thing that you want to get used to, if you're not eating a lot of carbohydrate, add salt to your food. Add salt, add salt, add salt. But do not be afraid of how much food you're eating. Try to get, however, into an 18-6 or a 16-8 routine. Even every now and then, if you're overweight, to lose weight, a 23-1. Which are the number of meals. 1 meal a day, which means you go 23 hours without eating. 18-6, where you go 18 hours without eating and you eat in a 6-hour window. But please make sure that you fat fortify and salt fortify your food, because those are big issues. Eat with a knife and fork sitting down. Don't walk around and graze. Don't walk around and graze. And it's difficult to eat a salad with your hands, so it makes it a little bit easier. And then avoid what you don't like. It's a personal preference. Some vegetarians will eat fish. Some vegetarians will eat eggs or dairy. Some prefer certain types of foods, but the broader the range, the healthier it's going to be. Have sugar-free fluids in your life continuously. This, for example, is peak tea today. Coffee's absolutely fine. I had my coffee this morning. It's a Sunday when we're taping this. Now I'm into my tea. And you can sip on this tea. You can see it's a big mug. It sits beside me. I don't drink the stuff. I sip on it throughout the day. It is plant-based, completely plant-based. But it gives me that little moment. It gives me that little mental cleansing. It supports my hydration without having to drink 64 gallons of water. You don't need to drink a huge amount of water. But if you're getting inadequate water, that's the way to do it. Now, if you choose to, I have no problem with artificial sweeteners, but don't consume carbohydrates in your drinks. Don't consume sugar-sweetened beverages. And also, try not to, the big trend in the I'm going to blend this stuff. I'm going to make a smoothie. What a smoothie does is takes you back to being a cow. I don't mean that in being obese, but a cow's digestion relies on mechanical digestion in a 4-chambered stomach, as well as bacteria, funguses, and viruses in their food to extract sugar. When you blend your food, when you juice, when you ferment your food, kimchi and sauerkraut, what you're doing is in a jar, in a mixer, outside of the human body, doing what the human body has lost the capacity to do. So I want you to eat your vegetables. Eat them, but don't blend them, don't drink them. Drink for hydration and eat for nutrition. There are very, very few, if any, mammalian species that hydrate themselves with anything other than water. Maybe milk. But humans are the only people that blend our food and drink it. Think about that. Eat your food once, twice, 3 times a day. Drink throughout the day, but you do not have to drink a massive quantity as long as you've got adequate electrolytes and salt. And the electrolytes from Relight, the electrolytes from LMNT, those are not bad to add to your food. When you're on a vegetarian diet, make sure you get metabolic blood work. And we do that all the time in the office. If you want your blood work done as a part of a consultation, text us or WhatsApp us to 561-517-0642. And we can get that blood work done to see if there are any micro or macronutrient deficiencies. We can look at your protein consumption on the blood work and say, bit more, bit less. We can look at your fat consumption. We can look at your micronutrients. So our metabolic blood work gives you a holistic approach to your general nutrient health. And we can determine where you need more and where you need less. So if you're monitoring what you're doing, I'm totally fine with that. And we'll make some suggestions based on where you are. So understand that it is absolutely fine to be plant-based. If you understand what you're doing, if you have health, it's absolutely fine to be plant-based and yet still to be in ketosis, which is the healthiest state for the human body to be in most of the time. Along the way, you may need some help to formulate that diet. We have a dietitian, we have myself. We can help you to do so. I'm not going to demonize a vegetarian diet. Just don't try to change people who are not vegetarian into carnivores or into vegetarians. And just like the carnivore community should not be demonizing the vegans and the vegetarians. It's the evangelism that I object to. And both, any form of diet, omnicarnivore, carnivore, or vegetarian, can be adequate. But we've got to formulate it appropriately. I am the Carb Addiction Doc. If you want help, let me know. Leave comments. If you're a carnivore and you're watching this, oh my God, blow me up. Blow me up. I'll respond happily. But don't use demonization words. Use facts. Or use at least your thoughts and your opinions, but not emotively. Leave comments. If you like this video, subscribe. We didn't even talk about the mental health side. We'll talk about that in other videos. And hit the like button. It helps us to bring you this product. Take care.